It was the kind of October evening you think of when you hear the word Halloween. Orange leaves skittering across the sidewalk, pumpkin spice candles glinting in windows, kids wobbling in costumes that were more enthusiastic than well-made. Our street, quiet, peaceful, a perfect night for candy and laughter. I'm William Jacob, County Sheriff by the way. And I live here, in the cul-de-sac, with my 6-year-old son. Let's call him Jack. Jack had been planning this night for weeks. He wanted to be a zombie pirate. We practiced the moonwalk in the living room, learned how to say trick or treat like we meant business, and even made a pirate map for our candy route. My wife, Chloe, hung the orange lights around our porch and placed a cranky plastic skeleton on the bench. I sorted out the flashlight, the camera battery for our tradition first door photo, and the jacket under the costume for warmth, because yes, October nights around here turn brisk fast. All was set. We stepped outside at dusk, Jack's cardboard sword hanging by his side, his face painted with a half-skull grin and one-eye patch. He looked terrifying in a way that was adorable. Doorbells started ringing down the street. The smell of caramel apples, of fall, of opportunity, and that's when I saw her. Emma Leo, the neighborhood HOA enthusiast. She had the clipboard, the flashlight, the authoritative posture of someone making rounds after dark. We nodded politely as we passed. Jack said Happy Halloween. She nodded back curtly. Everything seemed normal until it wasn't. We approached a neighbor's house, Mrs. Peterson's place, her porch light on, bowl of candy ready. Jack hopped up the steps, said the line, got the candy, grinned wide. I took the photo perfect. Then Emma appeared from the side of the yard, stepping into the porch light, camera phone in hand. She cleared her throat like she always does, sharp, official. Good evening, Mr. Jacob, she said. The community rules require me to make sure all trick-or-treating minors adhere to registered costumes and parental supervision. May I see your son's registration blanket? My eyebrow went up. Registration blanket? She nodded. Yes, every trick-or-treater should be registered in the neighborhood log after dark. For safety compliance, Jack looked up at me. Daddy? I smiled at him. Everything's fine, champ. Just Halloween business. I turned to Emma. I'm Sheriff William Jacob. This is my son Jack. We're good. Her eyes flicked. Oh, right. I wasn't aware. Cue tension. Since you're the sheriff, she continued, we'll just note that you're supervising, but please ensure the log is updated. I said politely, thank you, and you can rest easy. Jack is with me. As we left, Chloe waiting by the sidewalk, Jack tugging my sleeve, I thought, well, that was odd. And that's how the night began. Pumpkins flickering, children laughing, the whisper of authority at my shoulder. Because when the person with the clipboard tries to play sheriff in your own domain, well, you get to decide how the story ends. The first half hour went smoothly enough. Jack's candy bucket was already halfway full, mini chocolate bars, gummy worms, and one suspiciously homemade popcorn ball that Chloe later confiscated for research purposes. We laughed, waved at neighbors, took photos. It was perfect. Until we reached the middle of the street, where the Leo residence stood. Now, Emma's house was the kind that practically glowed with regulation. Her porch light was at the exact HOA-approved brightness. Her pumpkins were identical, perfectly spaced, and, rumor had it, measured by ruler. Even her scarecrow wore a tiny name tag that read Compliant Harvest Display. As Jack skipped past, humming the Pirates of the Caribbean tune, Emma stepped out again, clipboard under one arm, walkie-talkie in the other. Excuse me, Sheriff Jacob, she called. Jack whispered, "UHO, Dad." She's back, I smiled. Don't worry, matey. Captain Dad's got this, Emma approached, frowning. I'm afraid we have a violation. I blinked. Violation? She held up her flashlight like it was the torch of justice. Section 4B of the Community Halloween Guidelines. Costumes depicting violent or undead imagery are prohibited on common grounds. I stared at her, then at my 6-year-old in his hand-painted zombie pirate outfit. You're kidding? Far from it, she said, clicking her pen. Zombies promote fear and distress. This is a family-friendly environment. Jack looked up, confused, but it's Halloween. Emma sighed, exactly, and we take it very seriously here. Now, if I hadn't been wearing my sheriff badge under my jacket, I might have lost my temper. But instead, I took a slow breath and leaned casually on the fence. "Ma'am," I said calmly, "my son is 6. He's trick-or-treating under parental supervision as required by law. His costume's made of cardboard, face paint, and dreams. He's not violating any actual regulation." She squinted, "We'll see about that." And then, I kid you not, she pulled out her phone, turned on the camera, and started narrating like she was hosting a reality show. "This is Emilio, HOA safety officer. I'm documenting an unregistered costume violation by a minor under the supervision of Sheriff Jacob." Chloe's jaw dropped. "Is she seriously?" "Oh, she's serious," I said quietly. "She thinks this is evidence." Jack, bless his little heart, tried to look innocent by doing his best pirate salute. "AI, ma'am." Emma frowned deeper. "That's mockery of authority." I chuckled, "Then you'll love the irony." She gasped like I'd just confessed to grand theft. "Sir, I must insist you remove your child from public trick-or-treating immediately. Non-compliance may result in disciplinary measures." "Disciplinary measures," I echoed. "From who?" She smiled sweetly. "From the HOA board. And possibly, if necessary, the police." I raised an eyebrow. "You're calling the police on a 6-year-old trick-or-treater?" Emma crossed her arms. "If rules are rules, Sheriff, even you should respect them." For a moment, all I could do was laugh, not out of mockery, but disbelief. The woman was quoting HOA bylaws like scripture, while my son stood there with a Snickers bar half unwrapped. Chloe muttered under her breath, "I'm starting to think the real monster here isn't in a costume." Emma must have heard her because she puffed up like a peacock. "This neighborhood maintains standards for a reason. If you don't like them, you're free to move." I took a slow sip from my cider thermos and said, "Funny, I was thinking the same thing about your attitude." That's when she pulled out her phone again. "I'm reporting this to the HOA emergency line." The HOA emergency line? I didn't even know that was a thing. Jack tugged on my sleeve. "Daddy, are we in trouble?" I knelt down, smiled. "No, buddy, we're in a story one we'll laugh about later." But inside, I could feel that familiar flicker, the one every lawman gets when someone mistakes paperwork for power. She wanted to play authority, fine, but she'd forgotten one thing: I am authority. And the night was just getting started. By the time we reached house number 47, Jack's candy bag was already half full, mostly chocolate bars and one suspiciously homemade cookie we accidentally dropped into the trash can 2 houses later. Halloween was in full swing now, laughter echoing, porch lights glowing, and the faint sound of Monster Mash floating through the air. You could almost taste the sugar in the atmosphere. Jack pointed to the next house, the biggest one on the block. Front yard decorated like a movie set, fog machine, glowing pumpkins, even a fake graveyard with tombstones that read "Here lies my diet and RIP homework." He looked up at me with those wide, excited eyes. "Can we go there, Daddy?" "Of course," I said, smiling. "That one looks epic." We started up the path. Chloe followed behind, recording on her phone, the kind of parents who over-document every cute moment because we know someday he'll roll his eyes at it. Jack knocked, the door creaked open, a spooky sound effect, probably planned, and out stepped our neighbor, Mr. Howard, wearing a wizard hat. He chuckled, "Ahoy there, young pirate of the undead." Jack grinned, "Trick or treat." Howard handed him to candy bars, "Take 2 for effort." Jack thanked him and turned to show us his loot. That's when the headlights hit the driveway. A white SUV pulled up, the kind of vehicle that screams official without any actual authority behind it. Out stepped Emilio, clipboard in one hand, phone in the other, eyes laser-focused on my son. Chloe groaned under her breath, "Oh no, not her again." Emma marched up the driveway like she was about to issue a warrant. Mr. Jacob, I'm afraid we have a serious problem here. I blinked. It's Halloween, Emma. Unless someone's stealing pumpkins, I think we're good. Her nostrils flared. Actually, your son is in violation of HOA Regulation 1 for B. I sighed. Which one's that again? She flipped through her clipboard. Children may not solicit, even candy, door to door after 8 p.m. without explicit written HOA authorization. Chloe checked her phone. It's 7:42. Precisely, Amos said. We're nearing curfew, and I've observed your son visiting multiple homes beyond the permitted route. Jack frowned. What's a permitted route? I knelt beside him. It's a make-believe rule, buddy. Like the ones in your pirate stories, Amos' voice sharpened. This isn't make-believe, Sheriff. This is our community, and we have standards to maintain. Now, let me pause here. I've seen people get heated before. I've seen car chases, bar fights, even to raccoons arguing over a sandwich in a dumpster. But nothing compares to an HOA president who believes she's protecting civilization one candy bar at a time. Ma'am, I said evenly, my son's 6. He's collecting candy, not contraband. Amos stepped closer, lowering her voice like we were in a courtroom drama. I'm within my rights to make a citizen's report. I stared at her. Report? Yes, for trespassing and unregistered solicitation. Chloe burst out laughing. Are you serious? Emma straightened her cardigan completely. This is private community property. Non-registered minors cannot solicit candy. I cut in from their own neighbors. Her lips tightened. It's still solicitation, Sheriff Jacob. Now I'm a calm man, but you can't imagine the patience it takes to listen to someone threaten to report your 6-year-old for saying trick or treat. Before I could answer, she pulled out her phone and, I kid you not, began dialing. Jack whispered, Daddy, is she calling Santa? I smiled. Worse, buddy, she's calling drama. Emma pressed the phone to her ear, speaking loudly enough for everyone in a 2-block radius to hear. Yes, I'd like to report a community infraction in progress. Yes, I have a child, approximately 6 years old, soliciting candy without authorization. Mr. Howard blinked. Is this lady for real? Every year, Chloe said dryly. Now, it took about 10 seconds for her to realize no one was taking her seriously, not even whoever she dialed. She lowered the phone, glaring at me. Fine, if law enforcement won't do their job, I'll handle it myself. She took a dramatic step toward Jack. That was her mistake. I moved in front of him instantly, not aggressively, just a quiet wall between her and my son. My badge glinted slightly from under my jacket. Mrs. Leo, I said evenly, I'd be very careful what you do next. She scoffed. You can't intimidate me with your profession. HOA rules apply to everyone equally. I smiled. I agree completely, and so do county laws. She froze, finally noticing the badge. That's when I said the line, calm, clear, and just loud enough for the bystanders. Mum, before you go any further, you should probably know something. I am the law here. The look on her face, priceless. Chloe nearly choked, trying not to laugh. Mr. Howard whispered, Oh, this is gonna be good. Emma blinked rapidly, the confidence in her tone cracking like a dropped plate. You mean you're, yes, I said, county sheriff. And right now, you're about 5 seconds away from making a very strange Halloween memory. The moment William stepped out of the doorway, the entire cul-de-sac seemed to freeze. The air carried that strange hush, the kind that comes before a storm. Emma stood on the sidewalk, her clipboard now clutched like a weapon of authority. Behind her, 2 of her usual HOA followers lingered near the hedges, whispering like spectators at a tennis match. Evening, Mrs. Leo, William said, keeping his voice calm but measured. His sheriff's instincts flickered, the kind that could sense when a situation was about to unravel. Evening, she shot back, her voice rising a pitch. Do you call allowing a minor to vandalize property evening behavior, Sheriff Jacob, he blinked. Vandalize? Yes, she barked, pointing dramatically toward the row of houses like a prosecutor in a TV drama. That little boy of yours was going door to door unsupervised, leaving sticky fingerprints on doorknobs, stepping on my azaleas, and demanding candy. It's trespassing. The crowd, now 4 or 5 neighbors deep, looked confused. Some tried not to laugh. Others stared at Emma, wondering if this was real or some Halloween prank. William crouched down beside his son, who was clutching his pumpkin bucket a little tighter. "Buddy," he whispered gently, "did you do any of those things?" Ethan shook his head, eyes wide and teary. "No, Daddy, I said trick or treat like you taught me. I didn't touch any flowers." She yelled at me. Emma crossed her arms. "Oh, I bet he did. Children learn these things from their parents. And you're supposed to uphold the law, aren't you? Not ignore it." William stood back up, slow and deliberate, like a man choosing patience over pride. "Mrs. Leo," he began, "you're saying a 6-year-old, dressed as a pirate, asked for candy, and that's a crime?" "I'm saying," she snapped, "it violates Section 1(4)(b) of the HOA's seasonal decorum policy. No solicitation, no unsupervised minors, and no noise after dusk. The bylaws are there for a reason." "Bylaws," William repeated under his breath, then looked her square in the eyes. "You do realize this is Halloween, right? It's the one night the whole neighborhood agrees to open doors to kids with candy buckets." Emma's lips thinned. It's chaos disguised as tradition. Someone in the crowd snorted. Another neighbor, Mr. Hollins from the corner house, called out, "Emma, for heaven's sake, it's Halloween. Let the boy have a Snickers." But Emma wasn't budging. Her voice sharpened. "If you won't discipline him, Sheriff, then I'll file a complaint myself. In fact, I should call the county office right now, have a report made about neglect." That's when something in William's tone shifted, not angry, but official. The kind of voice that could quiet a room, or in this case, a neighborhood street. "You know," he said slowly, "you're more than welcome to call the county office. But I'm fairly certain you'll be speaking to my front desk when you do." Emma frowned. What's that supposed to mean? He reached into his back pocket, pulling out his leather badge wallet. The light from a jack-o'-lantern flickered against the golden star embossed inside. "William Jacob, County Sheriff." A ripple went through the crowd. Even the trick-or-treaters stopped for a moment, eyes wide behind plastic masks. Emma blinked, color draining from her face. You're the sheriff, last I checked," he said mildly. "And since you've mentioned arresting my son, I'll assume you meant that as a misunderstanding, not a threat against a minor." The silence that followed was deep and uncomfortable. Somewhere, a kid in a vampire cape whispered, "Whoa." Emma's voice wobbled. I didn't mean arrest in the literal sense. I meant ... corrective action, William replied. "Well, next time, Mrs. Leo, maybe start there." The tension cracked slightly as laughter rippled through the small crowd. Even some of her HOA supporters turned away, pretending to check their phones. Emma's chin lifted again, desperate to recover. "Well, sheriff or not, we still expect everyone to respect HOA policy." "Of course," William said, his tone suddenly light again. "But the HOA doesn't have jurisdiction over Halloween spirit." He smiled then, that disarming, confident smile that came from years of de-escalating situations much worse than this. "Now, if you excuse us, my son still has a few houses to visit before bedtime. You're welcome to join us. I hear the Petersons have king-size bars." Emma sputtered, her clipboard dropping slightly. "King-size, that's a violation of portion regulation." But William and Ethan were already walking away, the sound of the boys' candy bucket clinking with each cheerful step. As they turned the corner, the neighbors slowly dispersed, shaking their heads, half amused, half relieved. The night settled back into its rhythm of laughter, footsteps, and doorbells. Back at door number 47, Emma stood alone, surrounded by carved pumpkins and plastic skeletons, the self-appointed warden of order who just tried to discipline a sheriff's child on Halloween. And somewhere deep inside, she realized maybe, just maybe, she'd gone a little too far. The morning after Halloween felt oddly quiet. The paper ghosts that once fluttered across lawns now drooped in the dew. Candy wrappers shimmered like confetti on driveways, and half-deflated inflatables leaned tiredly against fences. But over at the Willow Creek HOA office, a modest beige shed with delusions of grandeur, something unusual was happening. Emma Leo, clipboard queen and neighborhood perfectionist, sat at her desk, staring blankly at the HOA complaint form she'd started the night before. The words unlawful trick or treat conduct now looked ridiculous, even to her. Her coffee had gone cold, so had her pride. Every time she tried to justify what happened, that she was protecting community order, her mind replayed the scene, the sheriff's badge glinting under pumpkin light, the look of confusion on the little boy's face, and the laughter from neighbors who had once backed her every rule. She sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. What was I thinking? Just then, her phone buzzed, a message from the HOA group chat. Emma, maybe we should lighten up a bit next year. The Jacobs kid's adorable. Yeah, people are saying the sheriff handled that like a champ. P.S. Please don't cite me for leaving decorations up till Tuesday. Emma exhaled. It wasn't mutiny, but it was definitely the beginning of one. The HOA's Iron Curtain of authority was fraying, and she knew it. By noon, she decided to do something she rarely did, swallow her pride. That afternoon, William Jacob was out front, washing his patrol SUV when he saw her approaching. Her pace was slower than usual, clipboard conspicuously missing, like a knight showing up without armor. Sheriff Jacob, she began, hands clasped nervously. I wanted to apologize. About last night, he looked up, water still spraying over the hood. Apologize? She nodded quickly. Yes, I may have overreacted. I thought I was maintaining order, but in hindsight, I realize I was. Scaring children, he offered with a grin. She flinched, then let out a small, reluctant laugh. I was going to say overly vigilant, but yes, perhaps a little intimidating. William shut off the hose, setting it aside. Mrs. Leo, it's all right. Everyone's got their own version of what order means. But Halloween's supposed to bend the rules a bit. That's kind of the point. I see that now, she said, her tone softening. I didn't mean to upset Ethan or you. It was a lapse in judgment. He studied her for a moment, then his expression eased into something kind, the same calm he used when talking down angry callers or nervous deputies. Apology accepted, he said. Ethan's fine. He just asked if all adults hate pirates now. Emma chuckled awkwardly. Please tell him they don't and if he'd like. The HOA is hosting a small cleanup gathering this weekend. We'd love for him to come, maybe even help decorate next year's event. I think we could use a sheriff's perspective. William smiled at that. You sure you want to give up control like that? Emma gave a tiny shrug, the kind that hides humility behind dignity. Let's call it community collaboration. He extended his hand, then it's a deal. She shook it, visibly relieved. The tension that had once hung between them melted away, replaced by something faintly humorous, the kind of unspoken understanding between two people who'd both learned something about power, pride, and pumpkin nights gone wrong. As she turned to leave, Ethan peeked out the front door, a half-eaten lollipop in his mouth. Daddy, is the scary clipboard lady gone? Emma froze. William coughed into his hand. Ethan, that's not polite, but Emma laughed, genuinely this time. It's all right, I earned that one. That weekend, the HOA cleanup was surprisingly cheerful. Kids helped bag candy wrappers, adults chatted freely, and Emma, clipboard-free, actually joined a beanbag toss. William showed up with Ethan, who wore a new sheriff's badge sticker proudly on his jacket. Someone had even decorated the refreshment table with a sign that read, "Trick-or-treating, officially legal, by order of the sheriff." Even Emma smiled at that one. And as the sun dipped low over Willow Creek, it felt like the neighborhood had quietly turned a corner, away from overregulation, towards something softer, kinder, and more human. Because sometimes it takes a Halloween misunderstanding to remind everyone, even the strictest HOA officer, that community isn't built on bylaws. It's built on forgiveness, laughter, and maybe, just maybe, a few fun-sized candy bars. A week after Halloween, life in Willow Creek returned to normal, or at least, its version of normal. The lawns were mowed again, the decorations tucked neatly into garages, and the HOA emails once more filled with the usual debates over mailbox heights and acceptable shades of beige. But something subtle had changed. The air felt lighter, the neighbors greeted one another more often. And for the first time in years, Emma Leo, the once feared ruler of the HOA, had stopped carrying her clipboard everywhere she went. Instead, she carried a mug that said, "World's okayest neighbor." She didn't buy it herself. It was left on her porch with a note. For the lady who learned to smile, EJ. EJ, of course, being little Ethan Jacob. She laughed so hard she nearly spilled her coffee. Meanwhile, Sheriff William Jacob was back in his office downtown, recounting the great Halloween HOA incident to his deputies. It had become local legend by then, retold between chuckles at every lunch break. "So let me get this straight," said Deputy Morales, barely holding back laughter. "She tried to citizen arrest a 6-year-old for having too much candy?" "Yep," William said, leaning back in his chair. "And the scary part, she almost had paperwork ready." The room erupted in laughter, but later, when the laughter died down and the day quieted, William found himself thinking about that night in a different way. He realized how easy it was for people to get lost in their own rules, to forget that community wasn't about control, but connection. That sometimes all it takes to turn hostility into harmony is a simple, honest conversation. Or maybe a little kid in a pirate costume with a bucket full of Reese's. The HOA turns human. By mid-November, the Willow Creek HOA meetings had changed too. Instead of rigid debates, they started with potluck snacks and small talk. Someone even suggested turning next year's Halloween into an official community event, complete with a candy parade, costume contest, and haunted HOA booth. Emma, blushing, volunteered to run it. "I think I've proven I'm qualified," she joked, to the sound of friendly laughter. William offered to sponsor the event from the sheriff's department, and Ethan immediately claimed dibs on being the parade's junior deputy. And just like that, the neighborhood that once measured perfection by lawn symmetry rediscovered something better, a sense of joy. The irony lives on. But perhaps the sweetest twist of all came 2 weeks later, when William was driving home after his shift. As he passed the entrance to Willow Creek, he noticed a brand new community sign. In bold letters, it read, "Welcome to Willow Creek, a friendly community mostly." And underneath, written in smaller print, "Trick-or-treat readers welcome, HOA, approved." He couldn't help but laugh. He snapped a photo and sent it to Emma with one line. "Now that's what I call progress." She replied 10 minutes later, "Don't push your luck, Sheriff." Later that night, William tucked Ethan into bed. The little boy, half asleep, mumbled, "Dad, Mrs. Leo's gonna help with the haunted house next year." William smiled, "That's right, buddy." "Can I still be the sheriff?" Ethan asked. "Always," William said softly. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees, carrying faint traces of autumn. Porch lights blinked off one by one, and the quiet peace of Willow Creek settled in again, not perfect, not rule-free, but better. And if you passed by their street at just the right moment, you might have heard the faint echo of a kid's laughter, the sound of fences mending, and a community finally remembering that rules don't make a neighborhood, people do. So next time you meet a neighborhood Karen, remember this: sometimes they just need a little reminder that Halloween isn't scary because of the costumes. It's scary because of how seriously we can take ourselves. And in Willow Creek, one sheriff and one tiny pirate proved that a little laughter and a lot of candy can change everything.